I had actually felt what was a nodule on my thyroid. And so I found out very quickly that that does in fact look like it is cancer, and we need to take this out and we need to do it now. I was given that recommendation to, you're about to go through a big change getting your thyroid out. We would recommend that you stop breastfeeding. So I had to stop really abruptly, and it felt like, once again, something was kind of pulled away.
All right, welcome to the Breastfeeding Diaries, episode 5. And today we are meeting with Miranda, and she is going to tell us her story. And part of her story that I wanted to have her on the show is that she is on her feet all day. Her job involves meeting with patients, meeting with people, and there's not really a lot of opportunities to take pumping breaks. And yet she was still able to breastfeed and nurse her baby for over 12 months. So I wanted to get her on and really hear her story and also some of her tips as well. So thank you, Miranda, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's go back to your first 2 babies. What was breastfeeding like with them? Did you do it? How did that go? I think you had mentioned they were C-sections too, right? So walk me back to your first 2 children.
Yeah. So my first pregnancy and obviously baby was Reese, and now she is 17, just about to be 17. So with her, first time mom, I knew I wanted to breastfeed because my mom had always talked about it. And I knew, just being in healthcare, how good it was for just in general to be able to do. So with her, I breastfed and pumped for about 6 months.
Okay.
And really kind of the outlier where I kind of made a mistake, being a first-time mom and just not really knowing how much you need to really guard that time and take the time to just step away if you are in social settings and different things like that. So my husband is a coach, and very early on, I had her in June, and we always go
Football season.
to coaching school at the end of July.
Okay.
And that particular year was in San Antonio. So I was geared and ready. I had my stroller, and I was set to kind of keep up with the other coaches' wives, and I had my pump with me, and I had really exclusively breastfed to that point. So when I got to San Antonio and I was trying to kind of keep up with everybody, essentially I would hand the baby to a friend, and I would go in the bathroom and put my pumps on. And back then it was the Medela, so it was like not the, let's pop the willow in and kind of go. I had to just sit in the stall and pump. And that's what I did like that entire trip. And then in doing that, I unfortunately accidentally switched her to the bottle. And then I had to pump. Like, I was committed to giving her breast milk, so I had to continue pumping, and I kept trying to switch her back. But being a first-time mom and being younger, this was 17 years ago. I really didn't know what I know now.
Yeah.
Where I would have continued to get home and have her try to latch again and really try to get back into that routine again. I just said, I'm back to work. I'm pumping, and let's just continue this journey because I don't want to frustrate her. So I pumped till she was about 6 months. So,
And at the time, you were still working as a physical therapist.
yeah.
Okay. So you were having to do those pump breaks and kind of make time for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was about, it was probably every 3 to 4 hours, I got to stop and have 30 minutes to pump. Obviously, they gave me space at work to do that, a place to store the milk. And everybody was really respectful. Sometimes the schedule would be a little crazy, and somebody would show up like during my pump time, and I would just have to look at them and say, okay, like, I'm going to need at least 15 minutes, and just kind of respectfully ask for that time. And most were very respectful about that. And sometimes there was just a situation where you knew, like, I'm just going to have to see them. And it's going to be 30 more minutes before I can get to that. But for the most part, I was really able to guard that and had really the support of my boss and coworkers to do that. So,
And at the 6-month mark, was that just a okay, she's eating solids, I can take it, I can slow down? Or did you actually start to see a drop in your supply and feel like it wasn't going to be worth it anymore?
So I think in that journey, to be honest with you, as long as I continued to pump, I really saw I was able to sustain. But we introduced foods. We started to introduce a little bit of milk at that point, and she was really doing well. At that point, I think we were transitioning a bit more to formula at that point, and she was doing well. It wasn't upsetting her stomach. It wasn't throwing
Yeah.
stool off or anything like that. So I felt like I could do that. And also the pickup in that particular clinic was just a bit crazy. So my mix was a little different than it is now. More orthopedic sports, a little bit of wound care at the time, and then some pelvic health. And so it wasn't just a solid kind of pelvic health realm like it is now. So it was a little bit crazier in the clinic. So that probably influenced it.
Yeah. So flash forward to your second baby. Was it a similar journey?
Similar, but I was more committed because I knew I could do it. I knew what not to do the second time around, and he did great. Kale was my second one. And at that time, I was actually driving. It was really interesting because I had left Texas at that point. I was driving into New Mexico every day for work. And so I gained an hour going, lost an hour coming home, so that type of thing. So timing became a little bit of an issue, but still a supportive clinic, still really kind of the same scenario, still busy. But I just knew going in, I'm going to guard this time. I'm not going to give it up. And I'm not going to switch to the bottle. I'm not going to pump too early. I'm not going to put myself in those situations. And I'm actually going to say no this time and protect that early time a little bit more. And
Like
it
the
was
first
really
couple
successful.
months.
Yeah. So we got to about an abrupt 10-month mark with Kale. And I had actually kind of taken some inventory for my own health and had a mentor at the time that said, I think something's going on. I'm not really sure what it is. And that just made me take some inventory. And I got into the doctor and I had actually felt what was a nodule on my thyroid. And so I found out very quickly that does in fact look like it is cancer. And we need to take this out and we need to do it now. Well, I was actually studying. I had been studying for a good hard 2 years. I was testing that August for my certification, something that I'd been going for really since I'd been a student and graduated. And this was something I had really high on my list for like work. I really wanted to be a fellow at a particular place. And that certification was the first step. And I was like, there's no way I'm putting my family through this again. So I was like, I have to do the surgery. I was given that recommendation to, you're about to go through a big change getting your thyroid out. We would recommend that you stop breastfeeding because we really don't know. You're going to be tired. You're going to be getting used to medication. You're going to be healing. And we want you to be able to recover. So I had to stop really abruptly. And it felt like, once again, something was kind of pulled away.
So now with having your thyroid removed, that wasn't necessarily like medically or for the sake of the baby, you couldn't breastfeed. Like it wasn't going to ruin your milk or anything. It was just like that's too many things at once for your body to take that load.
Absolutely. So
did you kind of like drop pumps and feeds and kind of just wean really quick and it just went fast?
I really did. I really pumped for just a little bit to taper. For him, I went ahead and had kind of transitioned to more of just a formula, and we had a little bit of a stash at that point, so we just tapered to make sure he was okay. He did wonderful by that point, obviously on some baby food. So,
and already 10 months, it's basically time to switch to cow's milk or something else instead anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So he did great. And I guess I gave myself permission to focus back on myself and do at the time what was being recommended to me and just really listen to the advice of the doctors that I trusted.
So they take your thyroid out, and it was cancerous, but they removed it.
Yes.
So you were in the clear at that point.
Say that again.
So you were in the clear as far as cancer goes.
Yeah.
Did they consider you
I was in the clear. They had recommended that I follow up with radioactive iodine, which I did. I tested in August, and then I had to be off medication for just a little bit to clear my system, and did radioactive iodine, where you're going to have to be hospitalized for 3 days and really totally isolated, like not around anybody. And then you're not able to go back around your family, and especially not around like your kids. And so you isolate for 3 more weeks, and just be away from everyone. And that was really hard. Thankfully, my mom and I were able to switch places, and I just lived in one room in her house, and she switched places and came to my house, and that was pretty abrupt. So that was the hardest part about being away from just, he was right over 1. I was like, I just want to be with my kid again.
And your firstborn was how old at that time? The toddler?
She was probably, they're 27 months apart, so she would have been just right over, 3 and a half.
So you have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. And at this point, for your family, were you guys like, okay, that's it, we're done having kids? And then that was just it for breastfeeding? Is that what it looked like at the time?
That's definitely what it looked like. And again, just not knowing the journey, you're trying to just follow the recommended advice. You're also kind of questioning yourself, and well, I don't know what my body can do. I don't want to overtax it, because I have to get used to this now and a different fatigue level and adjust to medication, when all in all, I will tell you now, your body adjusts. You will be okay. You will get used to taking medication daily. And
you mean like for having more babies?
Yeah,
like for
absolutely.
fertility and that kind of thing.
And people all the time are on thyroid medication
and they get
pregnant,
yeah.
And they're monitored well. You have to do more labs more often, but that's completely fine. And it definitely is something that is possible. So,
but the world at the time, so this was, I guess, like 15 years ago or so. So it was really just kind of, this is what's recommended. This is where you were at. And of course, having toddlers and babies anyway is stressful.
Yeah.
So
I think we're just thankful. We have 2 kids. We're really thankful for that. Let's maybe just take a step back and adjust and keep going and just be there for our kids. And we were just thankful for what we had.
Yeah.
So,
I'm in the stage right now where I'm still like, oh, I'm having babies, I'm breastfeeding. Like there's kind of that hopeful feeling. And I think a lot of moms do, where it's like maybe they've had 1 or 2 and maybe things didn't work out with breastfeeding, but it's like, okay, maybe for the future. But I don't know what it's like to be like, okay, we're done. And then, as the years went by, was it like if you saw someone who's breastfeeding, you had like a twinge or like or was it like, oh yeah, I did that, that's great? Kind of like, as an older mom, as years went on, was it just like, oh yeah, cool, breastfeeding, awesome? Or what did you feel as the years went on?
So I think I was always proud of my body for doing what I felt like, okay, my mom did this and I was able to do this. And I felt like, I really could step into like, what is this made for? And thankful that I really even got to do that journey. But there was that twinge in me, as we had talked about kids. He wanted 2, I wanted 3. I was an only child, and I was like, okay, I want 3 kids, and I never lost that desire. Like, even as I kind of prayed through that and just like, Lord, I don't feel like you've taken that away from me. I don't see how this is gonna happen again. I know it's possible. And really let me think how old I was when I did that. I was probably 36, and I decided my body seems to be going through some things that I don't like on birth control and things like that. I didn't like that my heart would race, and I just started having some symptoms that were not normal for me. I adjusted my diet, decreased caffeine, things like that, that I thought would help, and it did. But that was the biggest change for me, is getting back off birth control and just saying, okay, just let your body calm down. You want another baby. You've talked to your husband. It's okay if this happens, but I just want to be healthy. I just want to feel better. I don't want to feel like my body is kind of like going against me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So at this point, you get off birth control. It's like, okay. And at this point, are you doing pelvic floor health at that point?
yeah.
Okay, so you're working with mostly moms, I guess.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, like in my audience, what does pelvic floor therapy or health involve?
Pelvic health can involve care for men and women. I actually do both, but I definitely work with women a lot for pregnancy. I've actually had a few intrapartum, and that's where the patient's established with me, and I'm actually asked to go into the labor and delivery with them. I got the opportunity to do that just a few times, medicated and not medicated. So like that was kind of neat to be able to do that. And then pelvic floor therapy. So that could be for anything from pain to leakage to just really anything. So
Yeah. So you get off birth control. You're not really sure if you're going to have kids, and then what happens?
Well, I will say that as you get older, your body just starts changing a little bit. Periods get a little bit heavier. Just visiting with my doctor, I knew what my options were. Go back on birth control. You can try some options that slow the bleeding down and see if it backs that off. But really, you kind of find yourself, I can do an IUD. I can have a hysterectomy, or I can stop a step back because I wanted to keep my organ and do an ablation. And many people do an ablation at that point. I looked at my options and I was like, I think I'm comfortable going forward with an ablation. And so I had one scheduled really like December 29th of 2022. And it was weird. The day before that procedure, felt great about the procedure, was in a good, peaceful place. They call you to pre-reg the day before. You go for your labs, do all the paperwork. And after my labs, I was unglued. My piece was completely like removed. And walking back to my car after I did my labs, I was like, I don't understand this, Lord. Like, what happened? Like, is this just me being in my head about this? I don't understand how I went from completely okay to it's gone. And this I know. The Lord has taught me many things across the years, but when my piece is taken, you don't move forward. And that really stayed. So I stayed up really late that night, just reading things and looking at my options and just going, you know what? I remember saying to my doctor, my deductible's met, so we should probably just go ahead and get this ablation done. And even by the date, December 29th, like we were getting it in, but I said, okay, this is ridiculous. You do not have to do this. Your piece is gone. That is, don't move forward. You can do whatever you need to do at your own pace next year. Take a step back, step away from worrying about the money, and just do what you know is right. And that was canceling the procedure. And so I called the next day, canceled the procedure. The doctor called me right back and she said, "Are you sure?" And I said, yeah. I said, I can't explain it. My piece is gone. My stomach even feels a little upset today. And it has not come back. So my piece never returned. I didn't want to do it. And she said, okay, then I'll see you in my office just later January, like around the 15th. And that was my appointment day. So we went to Atlanta with my older kids. We did essentially like a theater festival there, and I thought, oh, this is going to be an absolute train wreck. I'm going to start my period. It's going to be super heavy on this trip. I'm going to be around teens, and I'm going to have an accident. Like, you know, what you don't want to happen when you're this old, and it's like, how many years have you had your period? And like, that shouldn't happen. And the whole trip, I never started. I felt like I had a bladder infection almost because I was like, something feels so irritated. I didn't feel like my body was right and never thought twice. Got home, had one more test in the cabinet, and I took it that morning right before I jumped in the shower and looked back down at the test, just not even expecting it, and positive. Oh, didn't say anything. Went to Walgreens before work, bought another test.
Yep.
Didn't think twice about this, and this is so silly because this is what notified my husband to call me. But Walgreens emails you your receipts. Well, they go to him. So I bought that test and I bought prenatal vitamins.
Yep.
I went to work and took that second test and called daycare after that to get on a list. And he called me and said, "Is there something you want to tell me?" I said, "Oh, I guess you got the receipt." He goes, "You bought prenatal vitamins." He goes, "Again, like, what was the result of that test?" And I said, "Well, I think you know." And he goes, "Are you serious?" And I said, "Yeah, we're pregnant." So that January 15th, at that appointment, I showed up. It was that day. It was all that day. It was crazy.
Wow.
I went to the doctor and I said, "Well, we're going to have a really different visit today and a really different conversation."
Yeah.
And obviously it was a happy visit, but confirmed pregnancy, like, and it was just awesome. Like, I thought, well, if I had gone through with that, we know that Adeline would not be here, obviously. But with the Lord's leading and the lessons he had taught me about peace to that point, it was, thank you. And thank you for not making me move on that and being concerned about money when listening to the Lord and like having your peace as you move forward through anything is crucial. And it was literally important in this case, obviously.
Wow, that is crazy. So your kids are teenagers basically at this point. So what was their reaction?
It was great. So for a little while, we go to Beltway, and they have just such a heart for fostering, and not actually been praying, like, because I'd never lost that desire for a third. I'd been praying by myself, not even with my husband, about fostering, and just like, Lord, I feel like there's still that desire in me, and I just don't know what you want to do with that. And so when we told them, we had wrapped up a little board book that I had bought. I had intended to send this to our German exchange student we had right before we had Reese. And then a little like stuffed bunny. And I just wrapped it up in a box and I gave it to them. And I said, "Well, you guys in like November of 22 just suddenly decided to grill my husband and I about, why didn't you guys ever have a third baby?" So the timing of all this is just absolutely hysterical, because in January we were able to give them that box and let them unwrap it. And as they unwrapped it, I said, God has a really funny way of working. Do you remember when you were asking me about that third baby? And they had unwrapped it by that point. And my daughter said, "Are we fostering?" And my husband said, "No, Mom's going to have a baby." And they both just lost it. She cried. My son was just happy, and everybody was excited. That was the reaction that I prayed for, because I was a little bit nervous. Like, are they going to be like, "Mom, really?" Or were they going to be excited? And little did I know how much my daughter had prayed for years for a sister.
Aw, that's so sweet. So let's talk about the early stages postpartum with having a C-section. What is your advice, or what was successful as far as like going from C-section to nursing? Because I think that is one of the factors. The statistics are pretty bad for
Yeah.
C-sections and breastfeeding.
Yeah. So I had C-sections with each one, actually, simply because my daughter was very large. She was projected over 9 pounds, and 2 weeks early, she weighed 8'8". And my doctor and I had agreed, like, really don't think that's a good idea over 8 pounds. Knowing what I know now, I might have tried a little bit harder or anything, but really, I have had such peace about my deliveries that never really rolled through my head. With each C-section, and definitely with the third, this experience here was a gift. They allowed me to have immediate skin to skin as soon as I was back in the room. I wasn't in a recovery room where my blood pressure was checked for an hour. They did it in the room with my baby, really skin to skin. And so that's something that I didn't have with the first two that was given back this time too. It gets a little rough the first night when you can kind of start to wake up and begin to feel things. Your movement's slower, that's fine. I knew kind of what I had to do. I would recommend, as a therapist, not log rolling because that kicks your abdominals in, but rather kind of crab walk. And then you can kind of move and support, and you don't fire your stomach quite as much with that.
Like to get out of bed and grab the baby?
Yeah, absolutely. And then my husband always stayed in the room. And this time the baby was more in the room with me, and not sent to the nursery at night, so where the nurse would bring her back. So I will say that was a little bit rougher. So it's nice when you have someone that can hand the baby to you, whether that's your partner or just ask the nurse. They're great. So mobility is always a little bit of an issue, but after that, it's like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I know my body can. This time there was a little bit more of a question, what I would be able to do because I was on thyroid medicine.
Right.
So that was a big question. And I will say it was maybe a little bit slower until my milk came in, maybe a little bit less colostrum production. So that was a little bit rough in the hospital. Not bad. We made it. Totally fine. But when my milk finally came in, I knew I'm going to be okay. Like, biggest thing I'm going to have to really do this time, that you have to do every time. But I knew this time going in, like, you might produce less because of being on thyroid medicine. That was the expectation. And, well, I'm going to do everything possible. I had one of my best friends order a supplement package. And it was at my house when I got home from the hospital. And she said, I want you to try these things. They helped me.
Like for you to take?
For me to take.
Oh, okay.
Just
I was
to
thinking
help
like
with
a formula.
production. So sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
And then make sure you hydrate. And that's the biggest thing is you should always have water or something that is replenishing you. You will dehydrate yourself if you don't do that, and your milk supply will drop. Because I can say through all the stressors that I've had, small and big, this time around, hydration was the number one thing. Stressors didn't really drop my production. It was hydration. So,
do you think having done, nursing, breastfeeding with a toddler for, it's like your second was born, your first was a toddler running around, versus like having teenagers? Because in one sense, it seems like it'd be easier because it's like, hey, they can just go watch TV and not bother you. But also, like, they've got sports, they've got activities. So do you think that they both had their hard, or was one easier?
I think what was harder this time is they always had an activity. They needed a ride. And so we had to really explain to them how important breastfeeding was. And then if I wasn't there, it's okay. And if I had to go back to the car and breastfeed, if we were at the stadium or something like that, like those are real, like not just in a coach's world, but also in just active teenagers. That if I step away for a minute, you know what I'm doing, and that's okay. I'm taking care of me. I'm taking care of the baby, and I'm doing a big thing. And in that, that's so cool that they got that education along the way, and they understand how important that is, and to do whatever it takes to support that and adjust your schedule and kind of make it mandatory in your own house that like this this is what we're building it around, and that's okay.
Did you do like any kind of like scheduling, or was it kind of just feeding on demand as much as baby needs kind of thing?
Say that one more time for me. Sorry.
Did you do like scheduling feeds, or was it just feeding on demand so you kind of just had to be ready to go anytime she was hungry?
While I was home on maternity leave, it was kind of that. Like I had to just kind of be ready to go. I think we were 2 to 3 hours. That's pretty normal in the early beginnings, and then sometimes it's feed on demand. And then when I had gone back to work at about 3 months, we were pretty much on a 3 hour rotation schedule. You know, her on her daycare rotation schedule, and then me on my pumping schedule. And so we would just try to stick to that. Once I had picked her up after work, I knew, okay, 5 to 6 is going to be important because I'm going to have to really guard this time. And if the kids need a ride, like we're going to have to be careful in that time frame and just make sure that we get them picked up and straight home, and that it's not, I need to go to Target and Walmart and I need something to eat. Like that they understood, like we're going to go home and we're going to do this and then we'll do it after. So.
And Adeline transitioned easily between the bottle and nursing?
She did great. We did the bottle just a little bit before I went back to work to make sure she would do okay at daycare. They recommended that, but I already knew to do that. She did great. Never did that confuse her. Never did she not want to latch for me, or never did she reject the bottle once she got to daycare. So the ability to go back and forth, she did really good with, and I will also say my second one did really good with that too.
So did you ever have a point where the daycare called you or something and they were like, oh, she's really hungry, you need to send more milk? Or did you always kind of feel like, oh, I have plenty of milk, we're good, just give her more?
Yeah, so the supplements worked, and I was able to build up a little bit of a stash before I went back. And then obviously everything I was pumping every day just continued to build the stash. I stayed on, they were a company called Booby, and they had smoothies and bars and gummies, and at some point I had tried all of those. My friend had also recommended Milky Mama has a Lady Leche drop, and it's fabulous. That probably for me was the single best thing, and that's the one I continued the longest. So that really allowed me to continue pumping, not really see a drop in my supply, and really keep a great stash, so no daycare nor call.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I definitely had that problem with my boys just because, and it wasn't even a supply issue. It was more of just a like, I was very strict about how much the bottles were going to be. I was like, it's going to be this much and at these times. And if they were like, oh, he's really hungry, I would be like, okay, but like, is he just playing with his fingers? Or is he tired? Is he teething? And kind of try to assess it before I would just be like, oh, give him more milk.
yeah.
Because I always tried to protect my supply and protect like, okay, is he really hungry for more? And with my second, it was a lot more of like, he's so hungry that we would end up giving him huge bottles, and I had plenty of milk, so it was fine. But if I hadn't, I probably would have had to be like, hey, let's figure out if he's really hungry or if it's like he's just a little cranky today or he's going through a growth spurt. So it's definitely a challenge that I think a lot of moms face, because a lot of daycare workers are used to formula. And so they're used to a giant bottle. And so sometimes it's hard for them to see that breast milk it grows with the baby and it changes with the baby. Whereas formula, you kind of have to keep adding more and more. So that's just my little vent sesh about
Yeah.
that. So, okay, now tell me about work and how did you kind of pump on the go with seeing patients?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for a mother-friendly work environment, you really get 2 pump breaks in your day and your work schedule. And I work an 8, really a 9-hour day on some days, and get 30 minutes for lunch. So my lunch was one of my pumps. So I could pump at 9, at 12, and at 3. And then I was kind of right on schedule to feed her again about 6 and about 8:30 or 9 when she went to bed. So I really hate to say it like this, but thankfully it was a breeze. I think you just have to, when it's time to pump, you step away and you do it. You don't keep going. Me being a manager, I could definitely kind of get myself in trouble a little bit if I didn't have that mindset to, you need to pump. Now I knew this time was a little different. And I knew with the wearable pumps that was probably hands-free. I probably needed to go that route to be more successful than use the Medela like I'd done with the first 2, since that was now an option. So I had 2 wearable pumps, Mom Cozy 12, and then I had the Willow Go, and my favorite was the Willow Go. Production was just a little bit better. The parts were more friendly with washing. And that's really what I liked about that particular one. But that helped me. I could be mobile. I didn't have to sit and only focus on that. I could, because that's your pump time. You can eat, you can hydrate, do whatever you need to do during that pump time. But I found that I could just put them on and just keep working, answer an email if I needed to, call someone back if I needed to, and just keep going, where I didn't have to do a pause, or I could finish notes. That was really helpful. So honestly, the wearables, because they work so well for me, it was like, no excuses, put them on, go, and keep going. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I think sometimes, people have excuses, but I think this is just my theory. I think sometimes when they aren't producing enough, then those other excuses come in, where it's like, okay, well, I don't have time, or I can't get away, or whatever. And I think when you are producing enough, you see that milk and you're pouring that milk into the bags. It's like, oh, this is worth it. This is worth it. Mm-hmm. And just you're constantly seeing that reminder that that pump break was worth it. But I think in a time when there is a dip in supply and somebody's like only pouring out like an ounce or whatever, they start thinking, I'm not making enough, so I need to slow down, or I need to stop. Mm-hmm. And that's just my theory. I think if you're making enough, there's usually not as much of a reason to stop.
Yeah. So even when I saw a dip in my supply, okay, 8 months when really they're already starting some food, so that's maybe an adjustable dip anyway, like that one was coming. Even when I saw that, because that can be really discouraging for people and they just kind of start to panic a little bit, I was like, anything I make is better than nothing. And I'm going to keep going because I know I'm still making something, and that something is gold. It is. You can't buy that. And if you're making it, just keep going. Obviously, I've gone to the nth degree with that because it's 20 months and I'm not pumping anymore. We just do a morning feed when she gets home, and then a night feed just if she wants to. And really, she's on milk now, so we don't really have to do that anymore. But it's I get to start my day with you, and I get to end my day with you. And that's some of the sweetest time, where you can pray and just spend time with just them. I'm still going, because when we step out of town and we're going to go to take my oldest on a college day, I know for 3 days I'm going to have to pump because I want to keep going, because I still want that to be an option for her.
Now that you've come like full circle in this and you've hit this point, like you're 20 months. She's 20 months old and she's still, you're 22 months, you said?
She's 20 months.
20 months. So how does that feel now looking back at like, hey, your first was only 6 months, your second was 10 months, and now getting to like double that? How does that feel?
It's crazy. Like, I was given the chance again, obviously uninterrupted by anything medical this time, and um, I wanted every bit of that because there was that piece of me that kind of felt a little bit robbed because the second was such an abrupt stop and a what if in my mind, not a big one, but there is that little bit of that pull in your spirit that's just like, I wonder. So I never lost that, and this time it was like when I could pass the 10-month mark and just feel the victory in that, and like, this is my decision. Nothing's going to interrupt it this time. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to let her decide when she's done. And she just hasn't. We weathered a couple of trips out of town. My husband and I celebrated 20 years, and we went to Vermont in October. So again, that was the first time I left her. I knew I had to exclusively pack while I was away. I did not try to bring anything back or take the cooler. I just did pump and dump. And when I was back, we just restarted because pumping is also about keeping up your supply, not driving yourself so crazy with, I'm throwing milk away. You know what? You're continuing your supply. It is okay to pour that out because you know what? When you get home, you're going to have what she's expecting. So keep going. We took our older kids to New York for Christmas in December. I did the same thing, and it's a little bit more challenging to pump in New York. But again, the wearables, just go. Yeah. It's fine.
I love that you were able to, you know, live life and enjoy things with your husband and your teenagers. So it's not like the baby's, you know, kind of ruining any of that. But still getting to come back and nurse her and still have that bond and like have that opportunity for her is so special. I love that.
Yeah.
So, and then how do you feel just like as a believer, like knowing that, are you more of like, hey, God bless me with this, but also like, even if it went away, like God would still provide food for my baby? Like, tell me more about that.
As far as breastfeeding goes?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it was just that sense of, I guess I don't know what I can do because I stopped at 6 and then 10 with the first two. And it was like, I don't know. There was a lot of the I don't knows between 10 and 12 months and just like questioning myself. And thankfully, again, my friend Casey was just like crucial. My coworker is so encouraging. Just let your body do like whatever it can. And at that point, I wasn't upset with myself if my supply dropped. It was just more of a, let's see what you can do and just give yourself permission. Like if it's, you need to stop, it's okay. Like you did more, just even having the chance with a third child to do this again. But keep going if you can. I think when I really look back on it, that taught me a reliance on the Lord in a new way of, I have experience, but Lord, I really don't know what I'm capable of. I had a very supportive pediatrician who just told me, you know, I think with her second one, she breastfed for about 26 months. And she was just encouraging at all the appointments, just let her decide, continue to hydrate, continue to support yourself. And if you're still producing, just do it. Don't worry about the amount. Keep doing what you want to do, and anything is better than nothing. And I've always been able to maintain that, which is great.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's so beautiful that like, I think so many moms, like if they had a bad experience their first or even second, it's like, oh, well, there's no hope. And in your case, it seemed like there was no hope for so many years. And then just this kind of plot twist from the Lord of like, I'm going to give you an even better, and even the golden hour, like you said, after your C-section was just a opportunity, like, for the Lord to bless you on top of what you already had. So I just love that he takes care of his daughters, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
sometimes
Just completely surprises you and takes your breath away in ways that you never dreamed, or you thought, the book's closed on that.
Yeah.
Well, he decides.
And I think sometimes we think we're moms, we have to do it all, we have to keep everything together, and it's like, actually, we can be daughters and rest, and God can do it all, and we're his daughters, we're his little girls, and he's wanting to bless us with this beautiful motherhood experience. So is there any other tips that you would like to share for pumping, working, anything like that?
I think when you are nursing, I'll give my nursing tip first. Just be with the baby, put your phone down. It's so easy to like scroll, but just absorb time that it is a gift. I realize that some people can't necessarily approach it as that. I always could. And I had to guard just against that passive, like random scrolling. It's not a time to check your email. It's not a time to like multitask and be super mom. It's pause, rest, pray, maybe reflect on your scripture for that morning and be with the gift that you've been given, and be present. So, time you never get back. For pumping, probably just guard it. Don't miss your schedule, stick to it. Give yourself some grace when you do miss a pump. Just get right back in the process and make sure you hydrate. Take supplements if you have to. So.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Miranda, for joining me. I think your story is going to be so impactful to so many moms. And just thank you so much. And for those who are listening, if you'd love to share it with another mom, I would appreciate that so much. And connect with us. Send us an email, breastfeedingdiaries@gmail.com, or follow us on Instagram at the Breastfeeding Diaries podcast. Thank you.